I want to bring to your notice that, what seems really pathetic when you look around is, I will use two words here. One is, I think those of us who identify as the left and Marxist or whatever, I think we are subjected to what I would call a kind of a blackmail. You know, we are being blackmailed. We know of emotional blackmail. Somebody blackmails you. If somebody has to extract something from you, they will blackmail you by saying, oh, uh, through all kinds of devices. And I think we also know in our personal lives, somebody is like trying to extract something from you, so you get blackmailed. And the other is surrender. When you are blackmailed, there is a chance that you call out the blackmail and then you stop it from happening, or you surrender, you succumb, you submit. And I think today, when we hear, not just when we not just see what is happening, but also when you look at the narrative that is there. See, one is things that are actually happening in the world and that are out there. But there is also the narrative that is given, that this is how you address this. So one thing which gets repeated over and over again is this thing that, oh, there is a fascist upsurge all over the world. This right wing is taking over everything. Everywhere they are there. I don't know how much that narrative goes on in Kerala, but at least in Delhi, and I think more in Delhi, among the kind of progressive intellectuals, that it's all taken over. I teach in Delhi University, So when I meet my fellow faculty members from JNU or other places, the only thing is, oh, are you fine? Oh my God, it must be so terrible, right? In Delhi University. Like, oh my God, how can you survive? How can you survive? Then my usual response is, no problem. I'm very fine. Don't worry. I'm very fine. No problem. Oh no, but you see, they have taken over. No, they have not taken over. We are fighting. They are not taking over. It's all fine. Okay. And the reason why I also give a response like that, which might not be true actually on the ground, is that the blackmail is that because there is a larger enemy, larger kind of, problem at hand, which is fascism or the right wing take over and all of that. So we are supposed to now tone down our own content, because you see, we have to make a broad front. So you want to pitch yourself at a minimum level in order to create a broad-based consensus, as they say. So you have to tone down your content so that you can have a united front. So we know this thing about the united front against fascism, right? And today you see that, look at the opposition today. India Alliance, and we have to all come together jointly. We have to, otherwise they will take over everything. We should all come together. So, because of which I think in fact, this was also true in, a lot of people give references to fascism in Germany and all of that. 1930s, what happened? But also 1930s, same thing happened. There also, the Marxists and the communists were told that, no, you now tone down your content, because nobody will come with you. So you have to now make a broad front and talk general things. So you will say, for example, in India today, we are supposed to only talk about, okay, what's happening in the margins, what's happening to people in the margins. Just talk about inclusive democracy. Just talk about defending the constitution. Just talk about defending the basic structure of the Indian constitution. Fundamental rights. These basic things only we need to now defend. And, so you make a thing of the preamble of the Indian constitution and then you put it everywhere. Right? There's nothing wrong in doing that, and you should do that. But this is where you have to pitch yourself now, that this is all we can do. So this is a blackmail. But the fact of the matter is that if you want to be seen as really who you are, and even the people whom you want to mobilize, even they actually come with you. The fact of the matter is that only when you give your maximalist program, because they want to know who you are. You are different from other organizations. You are different from other parties. How will they know? Only when you actually say who you are. And how does anybody know who you are? Only if you actually come up with what is your specific philosophy, what is your specific outlook, what is your specific politics. If you don't do that, then you are actually, in the name of United Front, you are constantly surrendering, basically. You're surrendering yourself, right? And the fact of the matter is that if in India, if you look over the past 10 years or something, then most of the actual resistance against so-called fascism, imagine, like, without going into the debate whether what is there in India is fascism or not, I don't want to get into the debate. But imagine if you, like, suppose for the moment that this is fascism, right? Then, even against this supposed fascism, the most radical resistance has always come from outside of this so-called United Front which you want to make. Take the Kisan Andolan, the farmers' movement. The farmers' movement came from outside this United Front. This United Front is useless. The farmers' movement. What other movement can you think of which really gave a tough challenge? Not the challenge, where the so-called fascists had to surrender. Farmers' movement, we are all agreed, right? It was so strong that the Prime Minister of this country had to say, oh, maybe I made some mistake, I'm so sorry. He talked about his tapasya and tyag. That there was something lacking in his tapasya, he said. You bent him down. And that happened from outside of this great United Front you want to make and, like, and be part of it. The second example I will give you, 2018, there was Dalit groups went on a strike all over the country. You see, you always say that in India it's very tough to bring about all India level movement. So even say take the farmers movement. So you had it around Delhi, North India, Haryana, that area, Rajasthan and all. But you couldn't have a equal level potent movement all over the country, from Assam to Nagaland to Gujarat to Kerala to Andhra. You had little bit, but still it was like concentrated in a particular area. You couldn't have it all India. The Dalit strike of 2018, this happened in the month of around April. There was massive Dalit uprising, and that was again, the Supreme Court was trying to dilute certain provisions in the SC/ST Act, Atrocities Act. That is the movement. And Dalits all over the country, I don't know specifically about Kerala, but Punjab, the government had to suspend the internet services. It is such a massive movement. Madhya Pradesh, in several cities in Madhya Pradesh, cities and towns, there was curfew had to be imposed. Maharashtra, it was the hub. Then in North India, you have all this Bhima army. Chandrasekhar Azad, who is now the member of parliament, the Bhima army, the Chamar community was on the streets. There was a Dalit uprising in this country. And I use the word Dalit uprising, you might be surprised. In fact, I also use the term Dalit insurrection. I wrote an article in the Economic and Political Weekly. And I think I titled it From Uprising to Movement. Dalit movement, you say, but Dalit uprising, what is that? Dalit insurrection, what is that? But you had that in 2018. But that article was not about this, by the way, the article that I wrote in Economic and Political Weekly. That is about the movement, the Dalit uprising in Gujarat, of all places, which is supposed to be the laboratory of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of Hindutva. You've heard the name of Jignesh Mewani? Jignesh Mewani, anyone has heard the name of Jignesh Mewani? He is a MLA from Gujarat. Later he joined the Congress. He emerged as the Dalit leader. Because there what happened was the Dalit community, they refused to lift the dead cows and dead animals because they were from that caste. So they said, we are not going to lift any of the dead animals in the state of Gujarat. So they went on a strike. You know, you think of workers' strike. I think on the 12th you are going to have a All India workers' strike. All your C2 and all will be very active. But you will say banking sector, workers will go on strike. Postal workers, railway workers, maybe the dock, port, the dock workers they will go on strike. Factory workers will go on strike. Arey, Dalits can also go on strike. Why do you think the caste movement? Now, a lot of you will think, okay, how does caste and class come together, all of that. Sometimes, you know, these kind of questions, caste, class, gender, all of this, how they come together, they can't be resolved in seminar halls. The Gujarat 2017 movement already resolved it in practice. When Dalits engage in what is supposed to be a strike, which is supposed to be a working class kind of a weapon, what do you see there? Right? So that's one example I give you. The other example I give you is Agniveer protests. You see the Agniveer protests, you have heard, right? The Agniveer protest, the army, there is privatization within the army. So the armies, the boys who go into the army, they will get only a 4-year, 5-year army job. And then they will have to, that thing is over, right? And you know, in the army, most of the people, the boys who go into the army are really from what you might call the proletarian backgrounds. Proletarian. Do you know this word, proletarian? Not everyone uses it these days. What do you call proletarian in Malayalam? Oh my God, that's difficult. That's difficult. In Hindi, they say Sarvahara. Don't you call it Sarvahara? No. So the proletariat, Marx talked about the proletariat, Lenin talked about the proletariat. So where is the proletariat, people ask? Well, these were the boys in Agniveer. And without anyone organizing them, without any political party, without any organization, they did a movement which, in a span of 3-4 hours, you know, in a place like Delhi, I don't know about Kerala, if you take out a protest, you cannot even like block a road, disrupt the traffic for even 5 minutes in Delhi. The police will come and drag you. And you can't do anything about it. In Bihar, the young boys who were going into this Agniveer project, into the army, they completely disrupted the city. And within a span of a few hours, from just a kind of a protest, you know, when the proletariat actually comes to protest, no, they don't do protest like intellectuals or university students, very disciplined, down, and show some flags and just play at the barricade with the police. No. You know what they do? They go and burn. So they went and burned the trains. Agniveer protest. So the Agniveer protest was outside the United Front. And I remember in Delhi, a lot of people came to me and said, oh, you know, this protest is happening. What should we do? How will we reach out to them? Because we as a left organization have tried to do this kind of protest, but we couldn't. But suddenly out of nowhere, in a flash, you know, flash mob, it is a flash mob. Suddenly it comes. But actually it is not a flash mob. If you understand it only as a flash mob, I mean the outer form is flash mob. But if you understand it only as flash mob, then you will go into a postmodern kind of theorization. You have to look at what is the class content of it. But when you look at the class content of the Agnivir protest, you will see there is a caste dimension also. There again, caste and class are again working in practice. You don't have to resolve it in theory. Writing long articles in EPW and all that, you don't need to do that. In practice, the proletariat shows you, it throws up forms that actually are already resolving it for you, right? So there are many examples like this. But the sad part is that because we are already subject to the blackmail, don't forget the blackmail. We are captive people, We have led hostage. We have been kidnapped by United Front. So we will say, no, how can we do those? That is different. Our movement will be different. Our movement will be different. Our movement we will launch here. We will launch. We will take the program. We will bring a pamphlet. We will do it. So because of which what is happening is a large swath of mass insurrectionary tendencies are something which you are not engaging with. Because this United Front narrative, I remember when in HCU, Hyderabad Central University, when the Rohit Vemula thing happened, I was saying, oh my God, this is how in India, United Front is made. Remember those videos, those imageries from Delhi? I don't know from Kerala, from this side, what happened. But being in Delhi, I saw Arvind Kejriwal visited HCU. So nice. There is a broad front being made, right? So Dalit groups, left groups, Arvind Kejriwal and all that. No sooner who came? Rahul Gandhi. He also came. Okay. Broad front is being made. United front is happening against fascism. Right? My submission to you is that the United Front is also being formed through a kind of a co-optation of some of these movements. The Rohit Vemula movement, such an important movement in this country, right? And we are all saying we want Rohit Act. Today with all this UGC equity and all these things they brought, we are saying you bring the Rohit Act. Is Aam Aadmi Party also saying bring the Rohit Act? Are they saying that today? They are not. I don't know the Congress if they are saying that. Most likely not. Rahul Gandhi has moved on. General Navarane or someone's book is showing now these days. Like that. But we are still doing the struggle on the ground, on the Rohit Act. So where is the united movement here? Where is the united front? Right? So these attempts, even the JNU 2016, you see what came out of JNU 2016, all that happened, Kanhaiya, Umar Khalid, this, that, and it became a big thing, right? So then all these politicians, all these Rahul Gandhi, everyone will go there. Then Kanhaiya from CPI will go towards Congress, right? This is all like this beautiful united front working for you. My submission is that even with the JNU 2016 thing, I think a real radical left-wing position was in fact what was highly necessary at that time. But we thought, no, we should not, because we need a broad front against fascism. Now, if you want me to jiggle your memory a little bit, think of 2013. 2013, that's before the BJP comes to power. That time, Sitaram Yechuri had a proposal. He said, we will have a third alliance, which will be non-Congress, non-BJP. Does anyone remember this? Of course, you guys are too young to remember that. But you have to read all this, you see. Sitaram Yechuri, as well as other left leaders, they said we will have a non-Congress, non-BJP. Today they are saying non-BJP. And you have to just Google Sitaram Yechuri, non-Congress, non-BJP, third alliance. But as soon as BJP won, it felt like, oh no, we can't do any of that. All the options are closed. So I think so. This is my first emotive reaction to you. So I think this is a question of strategy and tactics. That is there a way for us to really own up lot of these radical mass movements, resistance, not just movements. Movement is a bit middle class, very petty bourgeois kind of a thing. These were like uprisings, flash mobs, basically, with the really pure proletarian content to it. And you know why they are flash? Because they don't have any networks. They know that, okay, today we are in the streets and we are anyways doing private jobs. We are the new gig workers. We are the new proletariat, the precariat, right? And tomorrow we are not going to get another holiday. I am a delivery boy. So I am today on the protest and I have to do everything today. You see, that's how a proletarian thinks. So even your form of your movement, the way you have structured your movement is like, okay, I will do a protest today, then I will do a protest again next week. Like in Delhi, we do every Sunday we are there in Jantar Mantar protesting. We are like professional protesters, you know. I was arrested once for Palestine issue. Then again I was arrested for another issue. Then workers issue. Every time we just go like, it is like become a habit. Go to Jantar Mantar, get arrested. Detained till 6 p.m., 7 p.m. and they call me. Oh, comrade, where are you? Acha, oh, they didn't take you to this jail. Oh, no, not Mandir Marg jail, yeah. This time they took us to Padgan jail. Police said, yeah, they will leave you around 7:30. So we will meet there. Okay, comrade. But the proletariat does not work like that. So please have a look at my article in EPW on the Gujarat Dalit movement, out of which Jignesh Mewani comes as a big movement. Now it's another thing, then Jignesh Mewani also goes into Congress, then now Jignesh Mewani and Kanhaiya, they work together, and when before Omar Khalid went to jail, he was also working together. So that is my one emotive submission. The other thing I want to tell you is, when I was coming here from Delhi, two things crossed my mind. I already thought I will come and do the presentation on techno-feudalism and all of that. But along the way, all these things are happening to me as I come here. And one of the things that came to my mind when I thought about Kerala was, then a few friends, they got to know I'm coming, then they called me. They said, oh, you are going to Kerala. Oh, remember, we had seen that film together, this film by Lizzo Pellissieri. Yes, okay, yes, yeah, okay, Lizzo Pellissieri. Okay, yes, those films, yes. Then I thought, okay, Lizzo Pellissieri. Then I just kind of, going to Kerala, so I associate Lizzo Pellissieri with Kerala. Have you heard of Lizzo Pellissieri, this film director? Right? Yeah. So I have just seen 2 movies by him. Then when I was in the flight, there was a magazine of the airline. And I looked at the magazine. I opened the magazine. You know what I see there? Amitabh Ghosh. He's a novelist. Have you heard of Amitabh Ghosh, the novelist? Hungry Tide novel. Okay. I know Amitabh Ghosh. One of my friends, in fact, is very much into Amitabh Ghosh. Then Sundarbans in Bengal, this, that, nature is everything, climate change is happening, this is an existential crisis for humanity and all of that in Amitabh Ghosh, right? And Amitabh Ghosh is very popular. Then I was thinking, is there some similarity, I saw between the films of Lizzo Pellissieri, the themes that he's exploring, and Amitabh Ghosh. There is something today about this thing, and which is kind of connected to the question of climate change, which is that that there is an existential crisis of humanity. You know what the word existential means? That we can keep debating about capitalism, socialism, Marxism, fascism, this, that, and the other, but there is a even more fundamental question in front of us today, that the entire human race will go extinct. That is a more fundamental question. I said, okay, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't want to now go talk about techno-feudalism and capitalism, class relations in this event. I want to, because this is not the real question according to these big people. They are saying it is about the existential human crisis. Why you are debating all these little things, that this is a Sanghi VC or something, we want another progressive VC. What kind of debate is that? You don't do the debate like that, because entire humanity is perishing. So now, if you look at popular culture, as it is called, this is where things are. And not just Pellicer, where he is talking about, it is about life and death, and there is this deep instinctual chaos in all of us, right? He takes you somewhere else there, to the kind of what Freud calls the id, the subconscious. These things are always there, but we never talk about it. Or mankind is reaching a situation of apocalypse. Look at a lot of the movies today, popular culture. It's about apocalypse, or it is about some epic grand this thing, like those Kannada movies, KGF and all, right? It's like epic level. Or the rise of geopolitics today, right? There is something epic, something grand, like we are having an existential crisis, or it's like apocalyptic. So this theme of apocalypse and all of that is there in front of us, and that is what is going on. And this is where you need to see that this thing about the existential crisis, this thing about the apocalypse, this thing of that, the lot of the things that we talk about are smaller things. In a way, if you look at the resistance from the ground, the proletarian resistance, you didn't need Lizo Pellicer or Amitabh Ghosh or Hollywood film directors to come and tell you that, look, this is the era of epic battles, not of small gains. On the ground, when you see all these movements that I told you about, flash mob, look at what happened in Nepal, the Genji protests. No negotiation, nothing. In one day, they went and burnt down everything. Nepal, right? Bangladesh, what happened in Bangladesh? They are not going to this VC and all that. No. They are going directly to Prime Minister's house. They are not going and giving a petition to the Supreme Court. Look at this. I am talking about the ground situation, by the way, which your narrative is not allowing you to see, even though you are reading it in the papers and you are watching on television. But somehow your narrative is so strong because you are a captive audience. You are under a spell. You are seeing, still you are saying, oh no, I haven't seen it. Nepal, I haven't seen. Sri Lanka, what happened? I don't know. Bangladesh, what happened? I don't know. Nepal, what happened? I don't know. Brazil recently, what happened? Argentina, what happened? I don't know. You don't know anything. You only know your own narrative. You don't know about the Dalit strike all over the country. You don't know what Agnivir did. You don't know what Kisan Andolan did. So what you see is that today, just as there is a narrative given to you that, oh, everything is over, everything is being taken over, fascism is come everywhere, I would actually say no. I see resistance everywhere. I see resistance everywhere, more than before. And real radical resistance. One can talk about the content of that resistance and say, no, but that resistance is of this kind. Maybe that's not the kind of resistance we want, but there is tremendous resistance from below. But we are not taking them. So we are creating this one-sided narrative that it's all over. They have taken over the institutions. And there is so much of an institution fetish. You see, the proletariat is working outside the institutions. Proletarian power is outside the institutions, no? But you are only fighting for power within the institutions. So you are placed yourself in such a way, you know, you have placed yourself in such a way that you are not going to see proletarian power ever, even though on paper your entire politics is about proletariat and working class and all of that. What are you going to do? So I think that is the crisis today. That we need to, and I'm sure at your own level now, wherever you are from, you will see. Now you can carry this way of thinking and you will see that there's so much of new kinds of resistance, including of gig workers. Including of gig workers. Today everyone is talking about gig workers. It's kind of fashionable today. Everybody is gig worker, gig worker, gig worker. A lot of my father the other day said, "What is this gig? I don't know." People, new people, old people don't even know what is gig worker, right? We'll come to that. So the other thing I will tell you is that, okay, so what I'm trying to say is that this thing of apocalypse, this obsession with death, about existential crisis of humanity, because there's this word, because we are in university setting and there's a researchers union. A lot of this word you might have seen, Anthropocene, right? So Anthropocene is really this, that it's all existential crisis now. Humanity itself has become like a force of nature, right? So it is not Holocene or something. It is Anthropocene, where humans themselves have become like a geological force. So we are maybe at the end of this world. The entire narrative of the end of this world is like this Qayamat narrative. In Islam, you have Qayamat. Qayamat ke din aa rahe. And in Christianity, the day of judgment. Now, of course, in Hinduism also you have, the what is that, avatar, Kalki avatar and all of that, right? So, a lot of these discussions are actually going in a religious direction. Amitabh Ghosh, Pellisseri, all of this. What is going on? You are going in a theological thing. That is theology. Walter Benjamin, the great German Marxist, said historical materialism must enlist the services of theology. Walter Benjamin. This is, I think, in his thesis on the philosophy of history. What does he mean to say historical materialism must enlist the services of theology? And I think we must do that. So if Lizzo Pellisseri and Amitabh Ghosh and all these, things that are being written, movies made about the apocalypse is already here, from Fight Club to Hunger Games to whatever, the apocalypse theme is so important. Today, at the ground level, in terms of resistance movements, anti-capitalism and all of that, the proletariat is acting as though it is the last chance for them. So they don't think that they are again going to come and do the movement and the resistance tomorrow. They don't put a temporary halt like we do. Today's movement is done. Enough reels have been made. We have put it on Facebook. Now we will again come with the next issue to Jantar Mantar. They don't do like that. They come once and they have to do everything there. This is this apocalyptic way of thinking. It is we who are out of touch with it. We are not able to see this phenomenon and study it and see what it is. When the first time the Bhim army was launched, the Bhim army, right? Have you heard of the Bhim army? This is in Uttar Pradesh. Chandrasekhar Azad is its leader. Now they call themselves Azad Samaj Party. When the Bhim army first time it came into the picture, you see, the Bhim army is different because it was unlike the usual middle class character of Dalit leadership. Here was a movement which was really of the new urban proletariat, like guys who were working in malls, doing small jobs, the precariat as it is called, the gig worker kind of thing. That is the base. So when I used to go to the Bhim Army rallies in UP, particularly in Saharanpur. In Saharanpur, you could see there is this one Dalit gathering, big gathering happening, supported as a BSP, Mayawati and all of that. They used to come in their little wagon Rs and all their cars and all, they are the beneficiaries of the reservation policy. They are part of the Dalit movement and they do this thing. And then we had this other Dalit rally for which I had gone. They are like guys coming in bike like this, as though they're going to come and kill you, right? And 4 or 5 of them seated on the bikes. Completely different scenario, complete chaos. They come and then all of them, they climb into the stage. There it was happening in a seminar, the other Dalit group, right? And they have a big portrait of Ambedkar, and first they will light a candle, and there is a chief guest. Everything is like very official. The Bhim Army protest, first time it happens, and that's when Bhim Army got launched, was in Jantar Mantar. A lot of us went there. People were saying 2-3,000 log aayenge. 20,000 people. Youths. It was a Sunday. And there was complete chaos. And that we saw was, okay, here caste and class are converging. But no, comrades are not willing to see. Comrades are saying, oh, for caste and class, you need to read Ambedkar has written Buddha or Marx. Read that first. Yeah, I will read that. I will read the articles in EPW about Asiatic mode of production and all of that, Indian mode of production. But this was already getting resolved in practice. So now, the other aspect that I want to bring our attention to is, and I think this will now finally take us towards this thing about the gig worker. Let's light this up. And here you will see that we have a thing here, and here we have to do a little bit of so this debate or this thing that played on, as you know, a lot of you might have seen. Can you go down? This Dipinder Goyal is the owner of Blinkit. Is Blinkit used in Kerala? Right? So, owner of Blinkit, Dipinder, I think he's the owner of Blinkit. You can find out. You can, of course, Google. In my class these days, students immediately check, whether sir is saying right thing or misleading us. So I say I don't know, then they will correct me, Sorry, Zomato, okay. You see? So he's corrected me. So then there is Kunal Kamra. Who is this Kunal Kamra? Yeah. So this fellow then tweeted. Now this is very interesting. If you look at the way on the ground, even something as close to Marxism as, say, class or work or labor is playing out. And this gives you a very good idea of how all these things are getting framed. And when it gets framed, where are we? Are we able to influence it in any way or not? And here, as you know, Kunal Kamra will take the position of trying to, be the messiah of the workers. So Kunal Kamra is saying, so this Dipinder Goyal is tweeting, saying, come on, workers are doing very fine. If the workers were not doing so fine, then maybe they would not have worked with us. So Zomato and Blinkit delivered at a record pace yesterday, unaffected by calls for strikes that many of us heard over the past few days, support from local law, This happened without any additional incentives for delivery partners. So in spite of the strike call, a lot of workers still came. So it was a kind of a win-win scenario for the management, for the owners. I am grateful to local authorities across the country. Da, da, da. Most importantly, thank you to our delivery partners. And also the very use of the word delivery partners for workers or business associate. They're also regarded as business associate. Yeah, the workers. The term worker is not recognized, by the way. Let me tell you, the term worker does not exist. There is nothing called a worker. Nobody is a worker. As in, a worker is not a worker. If you go around, if you step out of this hall into Trivandrum and say, I want to find a worker, you will not find a worker. There is no worker in this world. Most importantly, thank you to this thing. If a system were, look at this now. One thought for everyone. This is a seminar. You need to consider thoughts here and viewpoints. So one thought here. If a system were fundamentally unfair, it would not consistently attract and retain so many people who choose to work with it. Very correct, right? How can you say no to this? Please don't get swept up by, I don't know what it was, some narratives pushed by vested interests. The gig economy is one of India's largest organized job creation engines, and its real impact will compound over time when delivery partners, children supported by stable incomes and education, enter the workforce. So he's talking about upward mobility. That this generation of workers who are doing this, but their children will do better, this thing. Now, Kunal Kamra replies, how much did they get paid hourly over the last 1 year? It's just another number you have it. Give it and end the debate. If you tell me they were at least paid 50 rupees every hour, they were on the app, I will never tweet about gig workers again. After seeing this, recently, a friend of mine forwarded me another tweet. It's all about tweets now. This is about Bangladesh, that the Jamaat in Bangladesh has recently declared that if they come to power, women workers who are working, they have to work only 5 days a week. And if they choose to stay at home, they can stay at home and still will pay. You see, this thing about increasing the salary for the workers. Now, when you do a union, what do? You say, okay, we will fight for more. So that's what Kunal Kamra is saying, right? And he's not wrong, that they are underpaid and they should be paid more and all of that. But here you have to see that how does one approach this problem, for example, right? And here I will draw your attention to the fact that, you see, if you do, on the one hand, as I told you, that a lot of these gig workers and all of that are engaging in those kind of flash mob agitations. Suddenly they go and do something and come back. And come back and do what? Again, do the delivery work. Within the delivery work, within that, what will be the forms of resistance and what will be the organization that they will make? Because that's how we are trained to think, that the working class in factories, they will organize themselves there in the factory as factory workers, as workers. Here, what we seem to be saying, and of course, this is not a totalizing thing that I am telling you, there are exceptions to this, but what seems to be the trend is that when they are working, they are not thinking about anything about organizing within the workspace or trying to turn their status as a worker into a political activity. So here they keep working, and they will work really hard, but at some point they will suddenly do this kind of like flash mob actions, burn down something, suddenly take out all the anger at one go. So when Kunal Kamra or a lot of people like us, when we say, and get into this kind of debate, that, the wages must be increased or they should be given more holidays, somehow you see that even when you are giving a call like that, these workers themselves, they don't really join you, with the consequence that gig workers still not organized. Even though When you go and try to organize them, you are maybe totally taking their side. You're totally taking their side. So Kunal Kamra is giving a tweet like that, totally on the side of the workers, but workers can't care less. And why is that happening? And I think to understand this, let's go to Marx. You see, for Marx, how did Marx really understand labor? How did Marx, and this is about the techno-feudalism, by the way, right? Because Blinkit, Amazon, Yanis Varoufakis, he gives a very good example because he's the person who gives this thesis of capitalism as techno-feudalism. He talks about Amazon, and then he says, think of Amazon as a city. Imagine you go to a city, imagine you go to Trivandrum, you go to Alleppey or somewhere, and everything, that entire city is just owned by one person. Everything you do in that city, or everything that you don't do in that city. Now, doing is easy, not doing anything is difficult, because imagine you go to sleep. You say, I don't want to do anything, I go to sleep. Even you went to sleep, even that gets registered in the app, right? That you, like I came here, there's so many people all here in one place. So the app knows that maybe there is a meeting or something going on, because all of them are so many phones, so many networks all together in one place. So whether you do something or whether you don't, the data is getting constantly generated. And as soon as data gets generated, that's value. So because our phones are always there with the GPS and all of that, simply by making a movement, I came from the hotel till here, that is value for the cloud capital. He uses the term cloud capital, right? So cloud capital, no matter what you do or what you don't do, because everything is now data. She walked like this, data. That's data. She sat down, that's also data. That she is here, that is data. That she will go, that is also data. Because everything is being tracked. But tracked now not in the surveillance framework. And the surveillance framework, there's a lot of problem. It's not about surveillance. It's not like, they're tracking you, they want to arrest you, they will not allow you to speak. No, it's not about that. It's more basic than that. It's more scarier than that. Surveillance is a political thing. They want to see that, against the government, voices should not be there. But that has a limited purpose. But the generation of value for capital. Now, this is what is happening in techno-feudalism, right? So, you don't have to really do much. As in, you don't have to go in a factory and work there in the factory for value to be generated for capital. Because earlier, we thought that. So, if you share a picture on Instagram, that's value for Instagram. As in, you said, no, but I didn't do any work. They didn't take my labor. Did they? No, they didn't take my labor. So what do you mean capital is making profit out of my labor? But well, that's how it is. So you go to a city, Varoufakis gives this example, and then he says, look, it's that it's a fiefdom. That the entire city belongs, like the landlord is to own all the land, and everyone in that, everything and everyone, not everyone, but everything. If he used to own, the landlord were to own everyone, then it becomes slavery. So we are not going that far. But all the land is owned by this landlord. So today, we are living in a kind of a fiefdom. So the cloud capital, we imagine it's there. It's in the cloud. But what is the cloud? The cloud is nothing but what is happening here. That is generating that cloud. It's like the moisture and the vapor from the ocean. It is that cloud which goes and then the rain falls. No? So this moisture from the ocean, this is the real life here, you real humans. That's why when you go on the computer, they will say, oh, we are checking if you are a bot or something. No? So you have to say, I am human. You have to do that because they want real humans. Only then that that value generation can happen. Now, so he is saying this is techno-feudalism, where now for the generation of value, even labor work is not needed in the factory or something. Your entire life itself is colonized and everything is data, and that leads to a constant generation of value. So the distinction between work and non-work, that itself is gone, right? So Amazon is one of that, and he gives one or two other examples. Now this is so true. Now if you go to Marx, the conventional thinking about Marx is that for Marx, it is really factory work and you go and do the work, and that is no longer true. So what Marx is saying is no longer true in the age of AI, in the age of digital capitalism and all of that. My submission to you today is that I think that kind of a reading of Marx is wrong. I think Marx all along, right from the inception, Marx's understanding of labor and labor power completely anticipated this, what is regarded as really new and novel. So in that sense, what Varoufakis is saying is, I don't agree. I think he's wrong. Saying that, oh, we have left capitalism and now this is a new thing, techno-feudalism. No. Because, take an example. If you look at Marx's Capital, Volume 1, then Marx talks about labor as, you know what? As a yeast. Yeast, you know. When you have your dosa and your idli, there is the khatta, there is the sour taste, fermentation. Some fermentation is needed. And if it is some fermentation in the dosa batter, then it tastes very good. Right? Or if you are baking a cake or something, you will use a yeast. You can buy yeast on Blinkit. Put some yeast, and then there will be fermentation for good cake. Right? Marx actually used this word. He uses this word yeast. And then he says, capital needs fermentation. Capital needs fermentation. Because you can think of the production process as a baking or something. Now, if you don't have yeast, how will you bake? Fermentation has to happen. So he says, what is the yeast? And his labor power is the yeast. And this is in capital. Now extend this example. You can now think of your own other examples. One example that comes to my mind is, now you can make it more basic and say, oh, it's like salt in curry. Everything is prepared, nice curry and everything, nice masalas you have put, very brilliant spices you have got. Kerala, a land of spices, very nice spices and all. But there is no salt in the curry. You will say, oh my God, what is this? Everything is there, there is no salt. And nothing is edible if there is no salt. But the salt is otherwise such a small part of the entire thing. So you can think of as labor power as though it is salt. While teaching once, I also give this example of a gas lighter. Gas lighter. So you've got the gas stove, you've got the gas cylinder, everything is ready. But there is no gas lighter, there is no match. Gas is sitting there in the gas cylinder. The gas is actually fire, the LPG gas. Do you also get that red color cylinder, gas cylinder? But if you don't have a match, if you don't have a lighter, you should go hungry that day. Or go out, eat something, just drink water and go to sleep. Everything is there. And gas is full, cylinder is not empty. But that spark is not there. Marx gives another example about a Mr. Peel. I think this is in Capital, or maybe it's not Capital. Where Mr. Peel gets all these workers and all these capital equipment and all, and he sails from England and he goes. Those days, Australia was like open territory for imperialism, and They would go and just set up a factory there. And he's also taking his workers. And in Australia, they were taking like prisoners, prostitutes, a lot of people who were kind of criminals, they were kind of crazy characters. So Mr. Peel, the capitalist, thought, I'm going to go and put a factory in Australia, and machinery and everything, and laborers also is carrying in his big ship. But after reaching in Australia, he put up his factory. Now production has to start. Workers thought, wow, this is a big open land in Australia. Why should we work for this idiot here and get tied down, bogged down here for life? So they also made off. Bhagya. So Mr. Peel, with all his capital, could do nothing. His capital value came down to zero. So capital is stock. The value of capital is stock. Otherwise, might be you can say, oh, this is okay. Today, I did a little venture outside of my organizer's permission. I went towards this Padmanabha temple and all of that. Along the way, I saw Infosys, huge. I saw Tata, TCS, right? Huge buildings. And then I was thinking, okay, huge capital. Maybe this is like 500 crore worth buildings I saw, I think. 1,000 crore, the Infosys building, Tata building. But if at 9 in the morning, if the workers do not go to work there, what is the value of that building? Tell me. Zero. Now, this Marx is already saying back then. In fact, I think this Mr. Peel story is from even before Capital. Marx is maybe like as young as you. So today, so nobody is like saying that, look, oh, you have to go into the factory and really do this kind of work, heavy work like you see in Charlie Chaplin movies. Marx is not talking about that. The Marxists have misunderstood Marx. That is the problem. Marxists said that no, if you go and work in TCS and all, that is not the real kind of labor. Our labor is like hardcore laborer, who is like digging the road or something. And that's the thing. That's why Marx makes the distinction between labor and labor power. What the laborer is selling is not labor as such, labor as a definite amount of work, but the capacity of work that the laborer is selling. That's why the laborer is not selling labor, but labor power. Now, there's a huge difference between selling labor, which is this amount of work, this much amount of work, that I will now clear all the chairs and keep it outside in the lawn. Imagine. I will lift everything, 4 of us, we will take all the chairs and we'll keep it outside. So do that, complete that work. Imagine somebody gives the order. That's a definite amount of work. What is the work? That will be quantified. Marx is saying it's not the quantified amount of work that the laborer is selling, but the capacity of work which is limitless. And that's why capital accumulation is limitless. If the laborer was, you can even think it like this, right? If the laborer was selling quantified amount of labor, then capital accumulation would not be limitless. Then there would be, right? But then we know that, and that's again coming to climate change and all this Amitabh Ghosh and all of that, climate change narrative, that no matter how much they decide that no, we should cool down production, there's too much of production, hole in the ozone layer, blah, 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 production does not go down. The limitless capital accumulation, the proliferation of goods and commodities is endless. Part of the reason is that because labor itself has been transformed from labor into labor power, what capital is using is itself just a bare capacity, and because it is a capacity, there are no limits to it. But that also means it's just the East. So today, in Yanis Varoufakis' model, that you just go about your normal business and still value is generated. You don't have to do real tough work. That's because we are just the East, We are just the East. What capital is taking from us is the capacity for work. And that capacity is there even in the little things that we do, because this is real human activity, no? It is not the activity of a robot. As soon as it becomes an activity of a robot, its value is again zero. So we are passing on real human capacity to cloud capital. Just as in the 19th century when Marx is writing, the worker in the factory was also passing on just the capacity. So in terms of capacity, there's really no difference between what was happening in the 19th century and what is happening with cloud capital. And that's why it's as much capitalism today as it was in the 19th century. And that's where Varoufakis's thesis, in that sense, in a strict sense. Otherwise, I agree with his larger insights. But strictly speaking on this, one would not agree. Now, if you do this, then what happens to this Kunal Kamra and Blinkit debate? That, Marx uses another concept called form-giving capacity. That the worker, he uses the term living labor. As living labor, worker, the laborer, passes on the use value of living labor because, capital is dead accumulated labor. So, the dead accumulated labor can get activated. Its value can go from $0 to $1 million only when living labor comes. Only when the worker comes at 9 in the morning and opens the Infosys building here, and then work starts. So, suddenly from zero, the value goes to millions of dollars, millions of pounds, right? So, you use the term form-giving capacity. And that's the difference, you might say, between robots and humans. Humans have a form-giving capacity to that work, that which it passes on. Capital is not taking shit labor from you. It is taking the best that you can give, your capacity. What it does with its capacity, that depends on the level of technology, the level of technological advancement and all of that. That's why Marx makes the distinction between surplus value and relative surplus value. Which means that the amount of surplus value extracted out of you is relative to the technology and the larger kind of, setup there. So if the setup is very good, then they can extract more out of you. But as soon as, say, the workers go at 9 in the morning, at 10 there is a power cut, right? Then what happens? Then relative surplus value will go down. Because, the workers are there to work, but, there is no power. No AC, nothing, and today buildings all need AC, so workers are all standing outside the building and smoking a cigarette. Relative surplus value really goes down, right? That kind of a thing. So, the form-giving capacity, that, if you see today, is that that has really gone down. So, living labor, so the gig worker is giving real labor, of course, like the East in the capital. So without the Uber driver, Uber is nothing, right? So they are the East. But at the same time, or if you think of cloud capital, right? Cloud capital is nothing without all the data that it collects and all of that. But at the same time, and that is the difference, if you want to see. I said there is not much difference between what Marx was saying, what is happening today, in terms of this definition of labor as the East, as labor power, as capacity. But the difference is that as capital gets more and more sealed from the inside, more and more insular, right? What you have is that workers become more and more like an outer appendage to capital. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. We do a lot of activity in the Gurgaon Manesar area. Take, for example, the Maruti workers. You meet a Maruti worker, say you also have a Maruti car. I think when I drove up from the hotel here, I think it was some Maruti car or something. or it could be Hyundai or something. So if you talk to a Hyundai worker or a Maruti worker and tell him, oh, you have been working in the Maruti factory for 20 years, I have a Maruti car. Arey, this thing is not working. Do you know like how to fix it or something? Because you work in the factory, you make it, right? Then he says, oh, sorry, sir, I don't know. What happened, sir? Sir, I just do this part, right? So it turns out that the worker does not actually know how the car is made. It only knows how to say fix a door. So he has been fixing the door since 20 years. Or he is doing some of the painting part, painting division. He was only doing. Earlier factories, what happened? The painting guy will know this guy who is doing this other work there. From that other section, this fellow also goes during break here. He knows the overall thing also, how the thing is made. But today, the worker's contribution to capital, even though living labor is still needed, right? The laborer is more and more completely outside the productive apparatus. So it gives labor, of course, still it is exploited, but it is not transferring the form giving capacity. It is not giving its ideas there. Its ideas are not needed. So where are the ideas coming from? It's all contained within the machine. And that's part of the thing that AI has done, right? That the knowledge, that the ideas themselves are now contained within the machine. So if you look at the delivery boys are taking the food packet from a restaurant and going and delivering it to someone there. What is there being cooked inside in that delivery packet? What kind of food people are eating? It's something completely outside his work schedule. Right? He just a mere appendage. That's why in a lot of countries now, they are trying to replace the delivery boy with the drone. If a drone can do your work, that means you are doing really low level work. No mind was needed. So delivery workers, gig workers, and now in the US already, they have Uber and all these companies, or maybe some other companies, they have taxis that are self-driven. There is no driver. That means the driver is doing work that a robot could do. So the form giving capacity is not there. If the form giving capacity is not there, the worker is not really invested in it. The worker also knows that it is doing this work purely mechanically. It is not invested. If the worker is really invested, take for example what is called the Stakhanovite movement under Stalin in the Soviet Union. There, the coal miner workers, they used to actually apply their minds. Oh, we need to work for the proletarian revolution. No, we are digging the coal this way. Now, no, from tomorrow, hey, you come. Tomorrow we will dig it in a new way. Nobody is ordering them. The workers themselves are trying to be creative. Have you ever seen a Blinkit delivery guy saying, sir, today, I delivered, from tomorrow I will deliver in a better way. He has no investment. He is also doing it in this cold way, no? He also knows it's just a job. You just go, let that, okay, it goes away, He is not passing on anything and he is not supposed to pass on anything. Now when you are not, so this is a big difference. That the workers are more and more, whether be it gig workers, I gave you the example of the Maruti factory, Hyundai car factory, you will see, most big factories. In fact, not just big factories, even in banks and a lot of offices now, because a lot of it is all being done by the algorithms and the computers. More and more, the relation, now you might use the word alienation, but I don't want to use the word alienation because there is nothing to be disalienated from. I mean, you don't want to really be part of that. So you better be alienated. It's good that the delivery worker is alienated from the actual workings of Blinkit. There's nothing to be identifying with, right? So because of which that kind of possibility of a resistance which will happen through and as the identity of the worker, like say unions. That union within the workplace as a worker, and through that to go towards revolutionary politics, that possibility is less and less. Because of which the resistance will be, as I told you earlier, the resistance is more and more in terms of flash mob kind of action, right? Because the worker is completely like an appendage. It will treat the machine, the factory, the system also completely as an enemy, which needs to be raised down, which needs to be finished off. The Gen Z protest in Nepal, one of the things that was not reported was that banks were burnt there. Banks. And there is a big problem of debt and loans. So if you see, I don't know, in Kerala, in Delhi, if you see, more than half of the Uber drivers are actually under a loan slavery, under the banks, because they have taken loan and they have to pay it back, and the interest is compound interest. So you have a Uber driver who is paying like since the last 5 years, and he's paid the actual amount which was needed for him to buy the car, but now the interest. So you don't realize this, that they are actually under some kind of a slavery, and they're very angry. So when they react, when they protest, what kind of a protest will that be? You can imagine. So because of this character of the gig workers, Kunal Kamra, when he says that, like let the workers keep doing that, but give them more per hour, give them minimum wage or something. That is not a problem in itself, because it's true, they're working, they should be given wages, the more they get, the better. But somewhere, my submission to you is that we are missing where the militancy of the gig worker really lies. Where the gig worker is actually more advanced in its forms of resistance than even the most radical intellectual can think. Because we are so kind of, used to thinking within a particular frame of democratic politics, institutional politics, and within that, or we want to use particular provisions from the constitution. We want to think in institutional terms. This happened, I will go to court, file a PIL, right? But the large masses of people today, the proletarian masses, are today more and more, I think, adopting forms of resistance that are completely outside all institutions, outside the constitution, including even the Dalit movement. And that's why the instances I gave you of the Dalit movement, because Dalit movement, because of the presence of Ambedkar, and rightly so, has a lot of dependence on the constitution. But even as I told you, the examples I gave you, the Dalit movement also in its most radical moments have gone beyond these frameworks and really showed us examples of real radical resistance. And that has so much to do with these new forms of capital and the way the class struggle then is getting reconfigured. The class struggle today, I was talking about the Maruti workers. Maruti workers in 2012, there was a big violence that happened within the Maruti factory in Manesar, outside of Delhi. And that violence, which took place inside the Maruti plant, which was a big thing, some people have also made a film on it and all of that. That time also, and this is a kind of a self-critique also I'm doing here, is that some of us were not able to really understand that workers are actually engaging in particular forms of resistance that we are not able to understand. In fact, the workers were far more advanced than some of us. We thought that, oh, if we can go this much, that will be quite a lot. But they are always going like far beyond that, and then we are backfooted. And I think this is what is happening. The educators need to be educated, as Marx said once, that the radical intellectuals, the activists themselves need to be educated, and we are completely lagging behind. And I think that is the question about democracy, that I think today the rise of fascism, the rise of right wing, and we are saying democracy is being eroded and all of that. But my submission to you is that democracy is itself structurally losing its efficacy for capital. And one of the reasons why it is losing is in this quote unquote good positive sense. And that's because the class struggle has changed, the capital labor relations have changed, as I just showed you, because labor is more and more a external appendage to capital, even as labor is getting exploited. Yuval Noah Harari used the term global useless class. And I think it is true. But global useless, and one shouldn't take it as a personal offense that, I believe in working class politics and how come anybody can call the working class useless. You shouldn't take it in that way, because the labor is more and more outside of capital, right? Capital also does not need democracy to kind of contain the class struggle so that the laborer keeps working for capital. No, capital does not need, because worker is more and more an appendage, which is very external to capital, because the worker does not have the form giving capacity transferring to capital, because capital is able to, what Marx uses this term called general intellect. On his fragment on the machines, general intellect. So capital has become like the intellect. So the mind, so the fact that the worker used to transfer the form giving capacity and even the intellect to capital, that capital over a long period of time has been able to, through machine learning, for example, and AI and all of that, capital has been able to manage, like in fact it has kind of re-implanted the brain of the human in its own machines, because of which the democratic management of the class struggle, which was necessary for capital, is not so necessary today. And from the side of the proletariat, the masses also, they are understanding this point. That's why you have a Genji kind of uprising where there is no democratic negotiation. So a lot of the right wing you will see, a lot of the right wing, so-called right wing, and the masses that come under the right wing are also coming because they have no respect for democracy, because capital does not need democracy, they also don't need democracy. So there are possibilities of thinking of freedom beyond democracy. When the Soviet Revolution happened in 1917, there was precisely this kind of a scenario. That for freedom, for proletarian liberation, we could completely go beyond constitutional democracy. That's why Lenin would put a lock on the Constituent Assembly. That's why Lenin would not allow, was it the Kerensky government, right? And there was a direct push towards proletarian power, towards Soviet power. That's how the Soviet Union came about. I think I might be wrong to say that we have to be that optimistic today. Definitely not. I am not suggesting that. But if you look at the new modes of class struggle and the new modes of resistance, I think we must learn not just from 1930s fascism, which would be a very pessimistic approach to only look at, when fascism was rising, so let's learn and let's now try to stop fascism. No, I think we should also today look at 1917, 1918, 1916, the period that led to the rejection of the liberal democratic regime. and proletarian power could fully come in. So I am very optimistic. I don't know about you guys here, how you're doing. These kind of things that the government of the day is bothering you. I also was infected with attacked by this Pegasus and all this surveillance thing on my phone, and a lot of people they did stories on that there is so much surveillance. How are you surviving? It is fascism in Delhi, and Delhi University is really bad, if you ask me. That our current vice chancellor, you might have heard, he gave that speech recently about urban Naxal and how we must finish urban Naxals in Delhi University and all of that. As the vice chancellor is saying that, and yet I think if you take the bigger picture, the proletarian masses are very agitated, they're very angry, and they are completely wanting to do something. The point is that are we able to see their activity? Are we able to identify ourselves? Are we not, kind of captive to our own narratives that we are in the name of fighting fascism, in the name of united front against fascism, we are living a life of ideological blackmail, that we are not able to actually say what we really want to say. So let's get out of that. You have invited me, and thank you very much.